The eclipse of a new year dawns the start of new ambitions for 2024, but in a revisit to points racing for the season championship, the series revisits an old-time classic with bidding due and drivers to claim. Live from the Lady in Black and the virtual Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina, we welcome you back in time to continue Season 6 of the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series, and with our coverage, as always, on the KBueno Racing Network. Welcome back and Happy New Year. We're ready to bring you some throwback action tonight. We're so happy to have you join us. We're alongside Francisco Bacalhau in the broadcast booth. I'm Kenneth Bueno. And Francisco, man, it's been a while. We've crossed through the new year. We had a lot of time off between that all-star race in North Wilkesboro. Took a couple of weeks for Christmas and the new year, but we're ready to get back in action, locking in for what's going to be the big stretch all the way to playoff territory. And it starts tonight at Darlington. This one's going to be really important.
Very happy, Kenneth, and firstly, Happy New Year to you and all of our viewers and to everybody here in the 4Wide Racing Series. It is great to be back here in the booth for the brand new year, and you mentioned that there's a lot of stuff going on in the 2024 side of this schedule. We still have the bracket challenge remaining from the remainder of last season. We have the stretch to the end of the regular season all the way to Talladega before we begin the playoff racing. There's a lot of things on the line. There's been a break. There's been 3 weeks since point racing has happened. So could rust play an effect here tonight at a track that's very difficult? I think so, and we're getting ready to see what these guys are able to put on here tonight.
Probably the most difficult track, Francisco, ever to bring just straight off of the Christmas break where everybody had all the Christmas dinners, celebrated on New Year's, and now they got to go strapped in for racing here at one of the toughest tracks on the schedule. And you're looking at it right in the center of your screen. Francisco, this is a really interesting slate of tracks that's going to bring us all the way to the playoffs, like you said, at Chicagoland Speedway. We've got Kansas in there, back to 1.5-mile racing. We'll go short track racing at IRP. First time we see that track ever in 4-wide competition. We'll head to the Big Oval, next to Indianapolis. We'll go to Texas, Iowa, and then Talladega, the Super Speedway, to close things off. There are a lot of different tracks that we'll be talking about over this month-long or so stretch before we get to the Chicagoland playoff starter here in the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series, but a lot to discover in terms of how things are going to really settle between now and then. Speaking of which, Francisco, we'll get into the point standings, and to give you a refresher, yes, Eric Schaefer still at the top with 480 points. Lawson Pio, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, surely the top three for what's been almost a long while now, but you're looking, again, top 14, like we mentioned at Watkins Glen, as close as ever. Have to factor Adam Alshire as a winner this season to be a lock for the playoffs, basically with the amount of points he's gotten, but for everyone else, no one is safe.
Yes, it's very close here for most of the field, Kenneth, and you have to be very consistent between now and the end of the regular season. If you look from Brandon Banks on downwards, you have to continue to put up the numbers. A slip or two between now and, say, 3 or 4 races down the line, and you could find yourself in 13th, 14th place or so. So you have to absolutely be on it. You have to bring your best efforts here every single week and stay out of trouble. It's obviously, you got guys like Colin Forster who have had a struggle the first half of the season. They're down in 20th, but they're only 36 points out, so it just goes to show how close it is up in the front. I think if you look at the top 3 in the points, those 3 have nothing to worry about at this point. They're just trying to see if they could start the playoffs with as many bonus points as possible for that chase to the cup. But you look down, Brandon Banks, Luke Knupp, Trevor Haley, a couple of good runs there. Jaden Porter was below the cut line just a couple of weeks ago, but good runs have put him up into the top 10. Austin Reedy with a terrible start is right now plus 30. Kyle Benson's doing plus 23 right now. So a lot of guys have been on the uprise, Kenneth, but also look at those names from 14th on downwards. You have Michael Newbraw in the 16th spot. Craig Lauslanger, who's made the Final Four the last couple seasons, is down in the 17th position. Adam Alshire, a former final championship 5 driver, is in 19th, as well as Colin Forster in 20th. So it's very close, but it's still enough time for these guys to try and make something happen.
And also, with the last couple of weeks being Brandon Hawkins' entrance into 4-wide territory, you know, his dominance and especially his win at Watkins Glen surely shaked up the grid because drivers didn't have the opportunity to have all of the points with a race win because Hawken was there. So there was a lot of factors that really changed the grid, mostly beneath the top 14. We'll see how that all switches around by the time we get out of Darlington, South Carolina tonight. Now, it's been since, of course, Season 5 that we were here. That was one of the last races before the playoffs in Season 5 with the next-gen cars. Here's a look at exactly what happened the last time we were here, and boy, it has been quite a while since we found ourselves in that kind of scenario. We'll head back to Season 5, where in that race, it was Kyle Benson leading for a good amount of it. All of a sudden, you had huge crashes go all the way to the end. We'll look at it here. Back in Season 5, it felt like a throwback. It's been a long while, Francisco, but it started here with 3 laps to go on a green flag restart with a green-white checkered territory in mind. Kyle Benson taking control, but crashes would soon take over.
Yeah, crashing here is not exactly a strange phenomenon. And then right here, as all that is going on, you see AJ Green puts the bumper to Kyle Benson, and right there, the caution comes out. AJ Green was the leader at the time of the yellow, and he celebrates a win that would help him in his playoff hopes.
Kyle Benson led 68 of the 161 laps. Here's what he had to say after that loss.
It sucks. I had a shot, and had to try to. I dove it in really hard, into 3, and it wouldn't turn, and AJ was right behind me, and I didn't think he was gonna cut under me that quick, but caution came out when he was out front. It happens. It's racing. Battled all day long, and didn't think I had the speed like I did, but changed something with that second stint, and we were rolling. I thought I had it, coming into turn 3, and caution came out. So, like I said, it's racing. It sucks, but we'll have to go into Daytona with a must-win mentality and try to go and win there.
So that was Kyle Benson after that loss at Darlington Raceway last time we were here, just a couple of seasons ago. He's looking to avenge that tonight, but we'll see what he can do along with the rest of the field as we'll take you trackside for our return to 4-wide action in 2024. We'll get you through the starting grid for tonight's race. Here from the lady in black, we're on pole. It's Brandon Hawken looking to go 2 in a row in points-paying races. He starts first. Eric Schaefer, points leader on his outside in row number 1, the first 2 to see the green flag. Ethan Fonseca Moreno bearing a new number. 21 is what he'll be wearing for the rest of the season. He starts third. Scott Healy, Season 2 champ, will be on his outside in row number 2. Kyle Benson rolls off the 38 car in 5th. Lawson Peel, Season 4 champ, going to be back in P6. Row number 4, you'll find Brandon Banks in the 54, and AJ Green, defending winner. Last time we were here, he rolls off from the 8th starting position. Rounding out the top 10, a pair of Chevrolets. Jaden Porter in the 9th spot, defending champ, and Jesse Prees in the 0.
Adam Alshire is going to be in the 11th spot with teammate Colin Forster in the 12th position. Those two guys need good points days. Craig Lounslugger will start in the 13th spot with rookie Trevor Haley in the 14th position. Looking at 15th is Curtis Kelly in the 71 with Michael Newbrawl in the 16th position. You have Kevin D'Elia in the 17th spot in the Skybox team with Christopher Bishop in the 18th position. And rounding out your top 20 starters, Craig Parks, rookie in the 19th spot with Ryan Pandiccio, another rookie in 20th.
Behind them in 21st, you'll find Lance Hill in the 1 machine for Stonks Motorsports, and making his first start in his 4-wide racing career, Daniel Moore bearing the 77 tonight. He rolls off from 22nd. Patrick Thompson in the 88, still searching for his first win. Lots of work to do from 23rd. Cody Kinsey on his outside in 24th. That's row number 12. Tyler Murray rolls off from 25th. Jacob Locklear in the 97. His V-Speed Ford Mustang will be in 26th position. And rounding out our 27 car field from Darlington, the number 82, the Canadian, Eric Stewart. So we go for 146 laps from Darlington, 199.436 miles, 320.9 kilometers. This track, a boatload of fun to drive, but it is just as difficult as it is fun. We'll see exactly how the field fares in this chase back to the regular season end and to the playoffs. Brandon Hawken has been the man on fire as of late, looking to go 2 in a row. Eric Schaefer and company just trying to settle the score quite a bit, get back to victory lane in their respective categories. It's a throwback night. We've got a lot of beautiful schemes out here. We'll show you all of them over the course of our coverage. But for now, pace car makes its way to the left and to the entrance of pit road, giving the way for Brandon Hawken and Eric Schaefer to bring us the first green flag in 2024. We're racing from Darlington.
And you see a couple cars in the back of the field scrape the outside wall. That's going to happen all night, Kenneth. Off of turn 2, you get that Darlington stripe. Many people have talked about it. It's a famous thing. And in lap number 1, a couple of guys already have it. But it's Brandon Hawken that'll lead the first lap of the new year, with Eric Schaefer, your points leader, in second, and Ethan Fonseca already chasing him down for the second spot.
Already about half a second of difference between Hawken and Schaefer. Put between them on this opening lap as Bueno tries to look on the inside. Good exit out of turn 2. He'll try to look to the rear bumper of Eric Schaefer's number 3. So far, not to a success, but all single file early on, of course, is kind of the staple of racing here at a track this difficult. You really want to put your feet down first before you start walking, before you really start running. But here comes the payday machine of the 21 to the inside. Eric Schaefer gives way without a fight. And so they've fallen back already 6/10 to your current race leader, Brandon Hawken. Scott Healy almost had a piece of the pie as well, but bring that payday machine up to second with his new number.
And Eric Schaefer gives them the spot because you lose too much time running side by side here. He was on the outside going into turn 1. That is not a favorable position. Ethan had the momentum, so Schaefer decides it's lap 2. I'm going to let him have the position and just kind of make way with what happens there and settle into third and see if he can hold off Scott Healy. But Ethan Fonseca with a strong start. And you see there the line that they're running in 1 and 2, Kenneth. That's kind of the way you have to run 1 and 2 because it's a lot longer than a traditional oval. It's kind of egg-shaped, so 1 and 2 is a lot longer than 3 and 4. So what you want to do is get to the wall as soon as possible and then turn down off of turn 2. Not like how you'd run 3 and 4, where you can kind of run the same line all the way through. There you see Kyle Benson trying to take the 4th spot, but let's go with him here as they go into turn 1. You see him dive down, and everybody's going to go right up to the wall as close as they possibly can. And as we go to the front bumper, you see right about there, you're going to try and turn down, and you want to clip. You don't really want to hit it too hard, but you want to clip where that banking changes, where those white dashed lines are on corner exit, to give you as straight of an exit as possible to set yourself up for turn 3. And then once you get to this end, it's just about running as good as you can. And if you can get up towards that wall, you can find a lot of speed.
There's Benson currently running in 5th. Probably one of the best drivers when it comes to history of this series at Darlington. And while nobody has been able to win more than 1 race here in series history, when they ran it in Season 1, Season 3, 4, 5, and now here in 6, you know, Kyle Benson has led a boatload of laps. He's been able to put himself highly amongst the competition and even won a race a while back in Season 2 that Benson was able to get the victory. So one of those drivers that has been able to find success here in the Lady in Black, and just a slight moment away from winning last season. It was just that moment with AJ Green, took him out of whack, and that was basically all she wrote in that last attempt at a green-white checkered. Bit of a loose moment in front of him. Scott Healy in the 64, bit out of shape trying to catch up to Eric Schaefer, but this 3-car pack all building together while Ethan Fonseca Moreno has slowly separated himself quite a bit. But it looks like, Francisco, they're starting to hunt down the race leader again. While Hawken was able to find that big of an advantage early, already at lap number 8, Moreno and company is chasing him down.
How much is that Hawken realizing the gap he was able to build in the short laps and now trying to preserve the tires a little bit, trying to see what he can do, because track position is going to matter. Sure, the 21 could catch up to the 98, but how easy is it going to be for him to be able to get by? So we'll just have to see how that unfolds in of itself. But also remember, the last time we had a points race, there was a huge topic of discussion, and that was the updated track surface details, where you can now run at several different lines, and it does different, it has a different reaction with the tires. So maybe in 3 and 4, you can get away with running a little bit of a lower line and then not be as much of a problem as it was in the past, where you kind of really had to run the outside lane to have any sort of chance in 3 and 4. You see a couple of guys have tried experimenting with a slightly lower line. You see your race leader being one of them, notably, to run towards the white dashed lines on the bottom of the racetrack, and a couple other guys still sticking to the outside wall. So that's just something to remind our drivers and our viewers about, that's still a thing that happened at the end of 2023, and it's going to play a huge role in these upcoming races.
Yeah, that oval refresh, we talked a lot about that at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Of course, Watkins Glen is a road course, so you're not going to find the oval refresh characteristics in it. But when we go back to racing here tonight, when we go to Kansas Speedway next Wednesday night, that's also going to be a huge topic of conversation, just how different the lines are going to be based on the grip levels and, of course, how this refresh affects the entirety of the iRacing service. So this trio here, Schaefer, Healy, and Benson, all third, fourth, and fifth. Moreno has walked away from them quite a bit. You see the distance between the two Chevrolets, Schaefer and Moreno. Possibly might have a battle for the lead on our hands, although it stays at 0.425 seconds. Now, of course, we have a lot of throwbacks in tonight's field. Here's one of them. We'll start, of course, with the driver who was able to get to victory lane last time we were here, AJ Green, who, if you're not a racing fan, you probably won't know this scheme, Francisco, but if you are a racing fan in the slightest, you have definitely seen that Tom Cruise Days of Thunder movie. This is throwing it back to Cole Trickle's number 51 Mellow Yellow Chevy Lumina that he drove in that movie around 1990. Beautiful scheme, and you can never go wrong with it.
Of course you can. I'm a big Tom Cruise guy. I love all his movie roles, especially the ones in Mission Impossible. But you can't go wrong with the Days of Thunder throwback, Kenneth. It's an iconic paint, the mellow yellow. Kyle Larson did a throwback to it in 2015 when Throwback Weekend was reintroduced in the modern NASCAR age. And it's just a nice paint scheme. Cole Trickle, Kyle Petty even ran it just after the movie was released in real time. But you can't go wrong with one like this. It's such an awesome paint.
48 with the beautiful mellow yellow colors, currently riding in the 8th spot. Of course, that is not a Chevy Lumina, that is a Toyota Supra that he's running in new times, but trying to catch up to Brandon Banks in the 54. Where there's a lot of separation here, Francisco. In the midst of this top 10, you're seeing the first half, maybe the first 5 or so drivers, they're all clumped together, but when you start to step back to the likes of Lawson Peel, Brandon Banks, you look at AJ Green here, and then behind them, the 28 machine of Jaden Porter, you're finding a lot of distance between these drivers. Is that just a case of different styles of attacking this track just resulting in different speeds, or maybe a bit more carefulness, maybe not as much comfort here in the opening laps of this race in this group?
I would argue it's a bit of both, Kenneth, because you are trying to be careful. It is a very skillful racetrack, but also very challenging, and maybe you don't want to risk it too much on lap 15. It is 146 laps this race, and you want to make sure your car, with no fast repairs available, Kenneth, is as good as possible for that final run of the race. This race could present itself a chance of maybe a whole green flag run or maybe 1 or 2 cautions, because if that is the case, you want to try and have a clean race car throughout the whole time. If not, you're just losing a lot of time. And trust me, with a little bit of damage on this car here at this racetrack, you'll cost yourself a lot of time in the fast 1 and 2. And there you see the throwback Jaden Porter has right there, that throwback. He presented it to us, Kenneth, during the break, and there it is right now.
That is Darrell Waltrip's 1981 Mountain Dew Chevrolet. Beautiful paint scheme. And again, much like the Days of Thunder, Tom Cruise, Cole Trickle paint scheme run back then, you can never go wrong with this one. It's such a simple paint scheme, but obviously the stories are plentiful when you think about Darrell Waltrip's career in this car with the 11 and Mountain Dew, basically their first real prominence in this series sponsoring a race car. So for Jaden Porter, of course, going with the simple Darrell Waltrip colors, but nonetheless, they look beautiful under the lights. And while Jaden Porter currently runs in 9th place, not where he wants to be a couple of spots ahead, he is closing in on the 54 of Brandon Banks, who's slowly approaching in the front windshield. So the 28 might have a shot at gaining a position here early on. Now, we did see some fighting up ahead the road, Francisco, involving the 12 of Lawson Peel. Looks like Scott Healy, someone falling off a bit. He was right in front of this trio right here. Benson, Peel, he had Eric Schaefer in there as well. Looks like Healy's starting to drift back a little bit, while guys like Lawson Peel on the upswing.
Yeah, Lawson Peel, it's always eventually a little bit of time before he makes his way up to the front of the field. With Lawson, we consider his team to be the Jaws team, really. Just it's eventually at some point he's going to end up towards the front, and you start seeing in your rearview mirror, you see the 12 car show up, and at some point something that's going to happen. It's a canon event, as these kids call it nowadays, Kenneth.
You know what? I'm really surprised though that Lawson Peel did not pull out a paint scheme for a throwback night. He dives to the inside here in 3 and 4 on Kyle Benson. Big lunge down there. Not going to be able to fully make the pass, but it did get him quite close to the back end of the number 38. They'll go back into turn number 1, chasing for the position. But yeah, you're right. Anytime you see a long run develop fully, you're going to be talking about Lawson Field specifically on the opens. He has that tendency of just being able to carve through the field when necessary. It's somewhat of a skill, Francisco, that we've only really seen at full force with this 12 car. The only other driver I can think of, the 94 of TJ Burth, just a special skill to be able to weave through traffic and end up rising to the top.
Absolutely, and it helps when they don't set a qualifying lap because it does put them towards the back of the field, and they love that challenge. That's why they every once in a while continue to do so, and you see sometimes at certain racetracks they'll do that, and eventually in due time they end up towards the front of the field. And speaking of the front of the field, here's a potential pass for P2. Eric Schaefer's closed the gap back on Ethan Fonseca here on lap 21, trying to see if he can put a move on to move up into the second place position once again. This is about just over half a second off your race leader, so they're still not exactly too far behind, but they have put a gap on P4 and Kyle Benson.
The 3 car of Eric Schaefer looking to get his first win since Michigan. That was his first W of the season and the back end of 2023. Got that in a stellar run to the finish with the driver he's fighting with right now. Ethan Fonseca Moreno, as there's the 21. Giving way to the 3, so make this switch for position number 2. Eric Schaefer back to control here, trying to catch up to Brandon Hawken. The single file train will continue. Distance remains the separator between everybody right now. And for the 3 of Eric Schaefer, also one of those throwback schemes, and we'll talk about the driver right behind him as well in Moreno, his beautiful paint scheme for tonight's action. But for Schaefer, this is certainly a good-looking one, and it's another one, Francisco, that we've seen before, but it never goes wrong whenever a driver pulls it out. It is Terry Labonte's 1994 Piedmont Airlines Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Beautiful scheme.
Well, you do know I'm involved in the airline industry, Kenneth, so it's nice to see when guys represent the industry like this. And Piedmont, that definitely is a throwback. It's the equivalent of someone possibly mentioning Pan Am of sorts. I hope to see that one day. That would be nice. But as he goes down the Boeing backstretch, it's very nice to see this car going around the racetrack.
You know, TWA, I don't know, Eastern Airlines, for those who live in South Florida who know that.
United Airways.
Yeah, United Airways. Just so many. What was it, US Airways too? When they
Yes,
had that merger?
yes.
Yeah. Just
right.
A lot of old airlines. Piedmont was one of them. And you know, the beautiful paint scheme that Terry Labonte was able to whip with his Monte Carlo. Would have been cool if we had an 87 league, because, you know, that scheme would probably be all around it. Beautiful on a Chevrolet Monte Carlo, but looks good on a modern-day Camaro, too. Schaefer rolls in his second. Did put a decent gap back to Moreno, about 0.6, but still short of Brandon Hawken to the tune of 1 second. So we'll see that all develop as here is AJ Green, finds his way underneath Scott Healy. This is not good news, Francisco. If your car number 64 on the back foot and falls out of the top 5, gets really sketchy in turn 1.
And that's what we talked about, side by side through turn 1 is not a good thing. You lose so much time. Look at the gap they've lost to Lawson Peel and how it stacks up the cars right behind Scott Healy. Now they're fighting for position in amongst themselves. It's going to cost them a lot of time. And when they do get to Scott Healy, they're going to lose time in the process because it does look like the 64 is a bit slower than them right now, and they're going to have to try and navigate their way past them at some point. So a strong start by the 48 of AJ Green. He's moved up several positions, and Now sitting here thinking about it, Kenneth, this is the first time I get to watch an iRacing event from this racetrack since I visited back in September. And, you know, the facility was very nice, certainly outdated, it must be said, because it definitely gives off the 1950s look from when it opened. But Darlington Raceway, when I went, it was fantastic. I saw the Xfinity race. I saw the Southern 500 where Kyle Larson took the victory. And, you know, it was just nice to watch the racing there. It was certainly interesting. It was the first time I got to go. And probably the 2 best moments of the weekend, if I had to say, was when I got to hear the entire crowd boo Denny Hamlin when he sped on pit road and in the Cup race, and also winning the Xfinity race where they all booed him. And probably also when I was standing right in front of the driver intros when they were introducing the playoff drivers. And just after introducing Tyler Reddick, I waved to Kyle Busch, pointing at my shirt, which was his crew shirt, and he smiles to my camera and gives me an approving thumbs up.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And, you know, first of all, I'm jealous because that's a bucket list track, Darlington, to visit in real life, along with like Talladega. So those tracks just want to visit before I go away at some point. But I want to ask you, since you've been there, you had the full race experience, and I know the sim, you know, can kind of replicate that feel a little bit when drivers take the track virtually, but in real life, what is that atmosphere like, and how is it so special when you think about it in comparison to, let's say, a Homestead, a Daytona, any other track on the service, or in NASCAR as the schedule?
Well, I think of the tracks that I visited, Kenneth, the first time it felt different was when I was on the backstretch and I saw just how outdated the stands look. You can tell that it's been there for a long time compared to these racetracks that we go to down here in Florida, where they're a lot newer, and even the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which has been around for a while, but they've renovated the place. Darlington still has the aesthetic look. You see the front stretch here, that's actually the back end of the racetrack. You go back there and it's just a bunch of farms, and really that's where they've set up all the props and stuff. When you want to go to the main state road that runs there, that all the traffic flows through, it's going to be right here next to the backstretch, because this used to be the front straightaway back in the day. So all road traffic is behind those grandstands right there. That's basically the museum back there right now. And that tower right there is still very much there. Parking is just off 3 and 4. That's where we personally parked. But it's such an interesting racetrack, Kenneth. It felt so, you can feel the history as I was walking on the front straightaway, and it was so narrow. You can tell that it's narrow, you know that it's narrow, but standing on the surface of itself, as I was more or less towards turns 1, it was very narrow. You could definitely tell that it was not built for 3 wide action.
Just the difficulty of driving here at Darlington is the fact that it's so narrow, and to make side-by-side passes in 3 and 4 a little more possible, but in 1 and 2 it can figure out to be a monumental challenge, if not fully impossible, to make a pass down there without a driver either getting into the wall, both of them making contact, or somebody just giving up on the pass entirely, whether it's the person being passed or the person making that pass. So it's just the narrowness of this circuit is such a unique part of the track. It makes it so much fun to drive and just adds on to the challenge of getting around traffic. And it makes the sim, you know, look more impressive when you think about how the drivers are able to get around each other. And speaking of getting around each other, it looks like the 64 of Scott Healy continues his trek backwards. He got passed by Jesse Prees about a lap or so ago. Now here comes Craig Lounslager to pull the punch. He goes to the inside in 1 and 2. He'll dive way underneath the dashed lines in the corner. He'll get the pass complete. Scott Healy outside the top 10, lap 34.
And soon enough, Colin Forster's going to jump on that as well. So if you're Scott Healy, you're possibly thinking about a green flag pit stop here soon, which we are about 15 or 20 laps away from potential green flag pit stops if this run continues as is. But I will want to finish a little bit of the point that you were just making there, Kenneth, about the sim. Though I will say the one problem the sim will not have at this racetrack is having lighting issues. That did happen, if you remember, the Southern 500. We had a 30-minute red flag, and I didn't even know what it was for, but then I noticed in 3 and 4 for a second. I was like, that does look a little dark, doesn't it?
Yeah, that...
Fortunately, that won't be a problem here for us.
That's a good thing we don't have that here. Yeah, I was about to say that. It's very good that we do not have that problem on iRacing. We get to have the full illumination of all the lights here across Darlington Raceway. You're looking at 17th place, Patrick Thompson. Now for Patrick, he bears a pretty interesting scheme in his own right, and for him, this is a 2006 car for Mike McFarland. So this is a beautiful Navy throwback, and if you remember sort of the colors or the sponsor, you'd also recognize that Brad Keselowski drove this similar kind of car in the Nationwide Series back then when he was starting his career. It's hard to believe that he's now just a full-time veteran in the NASCAR Cup Series. But once again, beautiful colors on display here for Patrick Thompson, still searching for win number 1 in his 4-wide racing career. He tries to chase down Curtis Kelly in the 71.
And how about that paint scheme for Curtis Kelly, the Jeff Burton throwback? That is an incredible paint. Maybe I'm a little bit biased again because of the color combination, but that has still always been a very nice paint. But there you see the throwback there to McFarland, and you do definitely get Brad Keselowski vibes. But I will say it's kind of fitting that he's running that here tonight, Kenneth, because what I also look at with that paint scheme is I see the Michigan Wolverine colors, and they just won their national championship, so I guess he's honoring them in a way.
That's true. The Michigan Wolverines getting that elusive national championship that's been bothering them for so long. I know a good friend of ours, Alex Schumacher, was jumping out of his seat when that happened because he had dealt with the last 2 years of them losing in the semifinal in the college football playoff. But nonetheless, the Mike McFarland colors for Patrick Thompson tonight. Getting nice runs out of turn 2. Looks like he'll unleash this pass. That's going to be for 16th on Curtis Kelly. They still have a while before they get to the next car in line, Trevor Haley. And how about that? Another fitting throwback. This one to Matt Kenseth in 2012. Now, when I first heard that Haley Francisco was going with a Ford EcoBoost Matt Kenseth theme, first thing that came to my mind was the pink one. October 2012,
oh, yeah.
Talladega win where Tony Stewart went up and over on the white flag. And just a big memory. Brad Keselowski, if we're talking about Brad Keselowski, he was able to pivot his way into a championship because he got through that wreck and Jimmy Johnson didn't. But nonetheless, the white base here for the 4 of Trevor Haley tonight.
It was such a simple paint scheme, Kenneth, but it just worked. It really went well with the Ford EcoBoost and the Best Buy colors that Matt Kenseth was running that year as well. So it's very nice. I would have hoped that he would have ran the same font as well, but it still works very nice with his paint scheme. And just very nice to bring that out, especially from an era in NASCAR where I was first starting to watch. It's one of the first paint schemes that I was noticing on the racetrack. But you're right, that pink one, I mean, it was in the month of October, so it makes sense why it was pink. But that is certainly one of the all-time remembered paint schemes, mainly because of the race it was in. Certainly, the 27-car pileup on the final lap and all.
And, no one really paid attention to the 17 until they got that panning shot of the 17 crossing the start-finish line, because everyone was looking at Tony Stewart. They were like, oh, my goodness, he just flipped. The entire field just wrecked, and all of a sudden, Matt Kenseth, who's leading the race, is all by himself, just crossing the start-finish line.
I have a similar experience to that moment at Daytona in 2022 at the August race when the entire field crashed when the rain was coming out. I was looking at the flag stand waiting for the caution to come out, but then I notice on the big screen TVs that they're wrecking in turns 1 and 2, and it's everybody. And I didn't even notice that Austin Dillon made it through it, and everybody's still piling in. So I was absolutely losing it.
Yeah, I remember that Twitter video. Everyone went insane. I'm in North Carolina at the time. I pull up my phone and I see the absolute catastrophe that was the end of that race. And having that all on camera, I mean, it was so cool seeing that you were there to experience that. It's raining.
Yeah, 100,000 views.
And as everyone just noticed that there were raindrops all over. A big memory for NASCAR fans, even though that was just as recently as last year,
2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, almost about
wow.
2022 in August, so it's quite been a while. And when we talk about memories of us as real-life racing fans, also got to talk about the memories of us at the KBueno Racing Network, all that we've been able to cover, not only in this series, but just in the entirety of the channel ever since it started in 2020. And for those that don't know, we are approaching our 4-year anniversary of the birth of this channel as Kyle Benson whips the tail out coming out of turn 2. That was a big moment there as he comes down the Boeing backstretch, and AJ Green finds himself in a fight there. Looks like Tyler Murray going a lap down, but you look at big crashes, big time memories. I have to think of Rockingham a couple of seasons ago in this series where one driver went around and everybody piled in. I know you remember that.
Yes, yeah, I do remember that, Kenneth. Oh, man.
All the Daytona races, Talladegas, the big crashes we've had there, but just a lot of fun that we've had covering those events.
Yeah, there's been so many, I would say, iconic moments in our history here at the KBueno Racing Network, as it looks like Benson's going to be one of the early strikers on the pit road, and that's an interesting pit road entry. He's still sliding his way through the bottom, and he's going to try and get to pit road speed limit right there. So we're going to see how aggressively guys play the pit entry. He went very shallow and have slid it the whole way. Fortunately, kept in control. But, thinking about the iconic moments in the history of this channel, Kenneth, having been around for 4 years, that's crazy to think that that's the case, but it's true. Just thinking back to the early days when you were covering the Bundren Lawn Care series, and when I made my debut in that series, at Daytona, and of course leading my first laps at Michigan, and eventually a pole position at Auto Club, and having a top 5 run at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Just a lot of good memories associated with the KBueno Racing Network, and also thinking back to my first ever broadcast with you with the TRL Truck Series at the Daytona Road Course in September of 2020. Crazy to think that we've been doing this thing for 3.5 years together, Kenneth. It feels like we've been doing this forever.
it's been a long time, and to see the growth of each series that we've covered, along with all of the memories we've been able to build with certain friends on the sim and all of that, it's been amazing. As AJ Green is the second taker, so he'll come down to pit road. Kyle Benson remarkably pitting early. Looks like Trevor Haley might also elect. Looks like he just got passed by Patrick Thompson. He'll wait out another lap, but for the 48 of AJ Green, he is in. So early stops here at lap 48. We should expect everybody else to come in as well, Francisco, sooner than later. But is this the right moment, taking this undercut at this juncture of the race?
If you look at the lap count, Kenneth, most of the people now are trying to split it because it's not a perfect 50-lap stint to do a two-stop race because it's 146, so you want to pit maybe around 48 or 49 and then come back in once again on 96 or 97. So the undercut is an attempt for most of these drivers just to get the track position on somebody. But basically they're cutting it in just about in half at the moment. I think the latest you might see guys come in is possibly around lap 55. As we're going to get a second look here, as this is Ethan Fonseca sliding his way on the pit road and actually narrowly misses the barrels and is able to keep going. He's going to absolutely lose a lot of time in the process, but I think you'd rather lose time than hit those barrels and absolutely end your race as he is on pit road now. But wow, that was a close call, Kenneth.
And that lost him a lot of time. Remember, he was inside the top 3, running behind Eric Schaefer, and then, boom, goes the dynamite. All of a sudden misses the entry of pit road. There's Eric Schaefer in the 3 coming down. This is the largest batch of cars we have seen enter pit road tonight. There's the 13 of Craig Lounsloger, Jesse Prees. We saw Jaden Porter in there as well. Looks like Brandon Hawken also coming in to his first pit stall, and they'll make the race out of the pit lane. So it will hand the lead to Patrick Thompson in the 88 for now. There's the 4-tire stop for Hawken, coming in at 14.5. Looks like he easily beats Eric Schaefer out of pit lane. So we just might assume that Brandon Hawken will have the chance.
Schaefer has an issue.
Yeah, it looks like Schaefer with a really long pit stop.
I don't think it was a long pit stop, Kenneth, because if you noticed, he was ahead of the 21 just before they went into pit road, and he stopped before. I don't know if he forgot where his pit stall was or if he ran out of fuel, because I think he ran out of fuel, Kenneth. Look how he was strolling through the pit road.
Yeah, it looks like that car was not in any sort of rev range at all before it got there. So for Schaefer, big time news. Yeah, the car was coasting the whole way, and it just looked very odd for him to be strolling down here at the pace comparative to everyone else. Look at everyone else, just a normal pit stop. They have enough fuel, but for Eric Schaefer, losing fuel pressure, entering pit road, that's going to be a huge penalty for him.
Yes, and that's obviously going to cost you time on pit road and on the racetrack. I don't think he should lose a lap, but he's certainly going to lose a lot of positions out on the racetrack and time to the leader. So that's the 2 cars as Pendiscio gets loose right in front of Brandon Hawken. But that's the 2 cars that were right up there with Brandon Hawken, Kenneth, that have issues on pit road as a car hits the outside wall. It was just in front of your race leader. Couldn't exactly make out who it was, but it looks like they were able to keep it going straight. But 2 problems for the 2 main challengers for Brandon Hawken here tonight. That's going to set them back a bit.
He's behind Trevor Haley, who just hit the outside wall there, car number 4. Listen in with Brandon Hawken. Now, this is in 1 and 2. Looks like normal approach, swinging up high, making that arc to the dashed lines on the bottom of the racetrack. Simple as always. Of course, normal racing here at Darlington. Take a listen into 3 and 4. We'll see if it's the same as the last lap. It looks like, yeah, right there. Clutching and coasting. Brandon Hawken is trying to save fuel here in this second stint.
Possibly to try and make a better effort in making the 2-stop work. That's the main strategy everyone's going to go for. It's pretty clear cut there, but I think because of how close it was for somebody like Eric Schaefer, I think he wants to take no chances of that and maybe try and extend a lap or 2 in case of a caution. But we've been 54 laps here under the green flag so far, so no indications of that right now. Lawson Peel's moved up into second. He's 2 seconds off your race leader. Kyle Benson's in third, 3 seconds back. So a lot of separation, especially after these pit stops. Ethan Fonseca's 10 seconds off your leader in the 8th position, but is behind a couple of cars that he was ahead of. So it's going to be a little bit difficult for him to necessarily get past those guys and move up into the top 5 once more. But I think right there, as we look, this is actually the throwback that Kyle Benson's running. And I remember this race, Kenneth. This was the Charlotte Roval race that he won in the playoffs, if you can recall, in season 2. So it's nice to see one of our drivers throwing back to himself.
Yeah, and this is his season 1 paint scheme. So for the 4 of Kyle Benson at the time, now the 38 with a Ford Mustang, I guess it all comes full circle with the manufacturers, right? But for the driver from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, out of Murray Reedy Motorsports, he's one of the handful out of that team that's throwing back to themselves. A lot of them in that group are all OGs of the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. They have been here since the inception. The car right in front is also one of them, the 42 of Christopher Bishop. So all of them bearing paint schemes that trail back to season 1, including your league owner, Tyler Murray. So a really cool personal touch for Benson and his Murray Reedy Motorsports team, throwing back not to themselves in a selfish way, but to themselves in a, wow, look how far we've gotten since way.
And that's basically about 3 years ago or so, Kenneth, because when you and I started covering the 4Wide Racing Series, that was spring 2021, more or less, summer 2021, I believe. And season 1 with their other broadcaster was towards the end of 2020. So for most of them, it's been 3.5 years since they started racing in this series. So they're throwing back to 3.5 years ago. And when you think about it, that's a long time, Kenneth. I mean, thinking about the stuff I was doing 3.5 years ago on the sim, I'd be running that GameStop car that you remember.
Yeah, I remember that car, the OG colors. You know, that's why you're seeing a lot of small details that we've put on this broadcast tonight, whether it be the old time KBRN replay, KBRN bottom ticker, you know, all of us just kind of thinking back to when we started either in the sim, started our careers, or just like we were talking about earlier, growing up as race fans, just like everyone else. You know, it's a lot of fun to just think about that memory, just think back on exactly what happened, what we were thinking in those moments, and how far we've gone since. You're looking at this pretty decent 4-car pack led by Craig Lounslogger, and in the middle of this group is the One Machine of Lance Hill. Now, a shame he doesn't have a throwback tonight. This is the same WWEX machine that we've been accustomed to seeing over season 6, but the Winchester, Tennessee native started 21st tonight, up 10 since the drop of the green. Really good stuff early, Francisco, by Hill.
And he needs those points, Kenneth. He needs those points. He's had a struggle the past couple of weeks. He's below the cut line, I believe, as we're running right now. So if he needs to try and help his playoff hopes, he needs to gain these positions. Jesse Prees is doing a good job so far this season. He's up, I believe, in 8th in points, and he's solidly above the cut line right now. He's running inside the top 10. Just another good example of why he's top 10 in points right now.
And for Hill, he's beneath the top 20 in point standings and had a 20th place finish in our last points-paying event at Watkins Glen in New York. So for Hill, this is going to be a really big rebound. Just stepped into the top 10, got around the 00 there of Jesse Prees, holding on to that last spot there in front of Scott Healy, who has settled back in 12th. Now for Healy, we saw him on the back foot early just because of tire wear and the way he was running his car comparison to everyone else. For Eric Schaefer, running out of fuel has cost him a bunch of spots. He's down to 13th after as being as high as 7th. His teammate and second place in point standings, Lawson Peel, now takes that spot behind Brandon Hawken, but this is a big hump that Eric Schaefer needs to get over, Francisco. What are you thinking mentally as a driver at this stage when you make that mistake, and how are you going to try to rebound? As guess, looks like that's the reset right there.
That's the thing, yes.
Curtis Kelly in trouble.
I was about to say you're going to be hoping for a caution flag, but I guess the caution flag must have heard that I was going to mention it, so there it is. And there you see Curtis Kelly with some damage on his race car with the rear end damage. I'm curious as to what happens here. We saw a couple cars hitting the wall, getting loose off a couple of corners, so eventually someone was going to have some sort of incident happen. So let's see here. Curtis Kelly just in front of the 91 of Alshire, behind Tyler Murray. Looks like Murray gets a little bit loose. Actually, it looks like Curtis Kelly gets loose. The 91 hits him, and then they both go sailing across towards the inside wall there. So we'll see if we can get an onboard look here from Alshire, just see what he saw. And most likely what you'll see is that the 71 is going to get loose right about there. He checks up for Tyler Murray. Murray did have a moment there off of turn 2, so the 71 checks up, and I don't think Alshire was able to see that at his level, and so he just goes through turn 2 as normal, gets into the back of Curtis Kelly, and that's how they both end up around.
And this is a really sketchy exit too. Super narrow. You can easily check up before you get into that outside wall. And they were teammates too. Two of the Skybox Supras getting big-time damage out of that. You see the 91 of Alshire chasing towards the wall, much like the 71 of Curtis Kelly. So they're going to have extensive damage here to bring out our first caution at lap number 64. Just a better look at it from turn 2. And the 71 just checks up. The 91 gets into the rear end. And Skybox not going to be happy to have two of their cars already severely torn up early in the going.
And there was almost a moment that similar to that one that happened in the Xfinity race, Kenneth. I was recording the restart on one of those as Lawson Peel shot out of his pit box, but immediately put the brakes on. Will not come out as your pit road as your race leader. But on a restart here, early in the race, there was an incident with Hemrick, I believe it was, and maybe Allgaier. I don't remember sure. But I'll show you the video after the race. It was a moment right there off of turn 2. There was a big checkup, and there was almost 4 wide going down the back straightaway. I was convinced there was going to be a crash. Somehow there wasn't, but it was because something similar like that. You get guys running close to that white line off of turn 2, and it's very slick, so you get loose, and you can either cause a wreck or cause a stack up, and in this case, it was a wreck.
So our first yellow here at lap number 64 of 146 from Darlington, South Carolina. We'll take a short commercial break, but we'll be back with regularly scheduled programming of the 4Wide Racing TJ Steam Series live on the KBueno Racing Network.
Who wins the race? Kerwin!
It is Ola, the sophomore. I give it all that I got.
You wanted the best, you got them for abreast. Often imitated, never duplicated. The greatest show on dirt, the World of Outlaws. Dirt Racing will be available September 27th. Pre-order your copy today.
Racing isn't easy.
Welcome back to coverage of Throwback Night, racing at Darlington Raceway for the 4Wide Racing TJ's Team Series on the KBueno Racing Network. Happy to have you for our first race of 2024. We're alongside Francisco Bacallao. I'm Kenneth Bueno. Just had our first caution involving 2 Skybox Racing Toyotas, Adam Alishire and Curtis Kelly, both of them with significant damage. Race off of pit road was Brandon Hawken and Lawson Peel. Close to each other then, close to each other now in the restart zone for the green.
The big gap that he had on most of the field is going to be evaporated now, but he gets a good enough restart to keep the top position in turn 1. Brandon Banks will settle into 3rd. Peel's going to keep the 2nd spot, and you have to remember you're back on cold tires. The field's bunched together, so you have to be very careful for the first couple laps.
See everybody stacked up at the exit of turn 2, just a big sketchy area with racing here at Darlington, specifically when you go up through the gears and that side-by-side action quickly fizzles out. Look at Colin Forrester making lunge for the inside on Craig Lounslager. That's going to be for 7th place as Lawson Peel stays within 2/10. Might put the first fight for the race lead tonight. We haven't seen Hawken defeated yet. Peel might be the challenger.
And now what this is going to do is it's going to throw a wrench into the pit strategy, because you still have to make one pit stop between now and the checkered flag. It's going to come down to when you make it. And we saw that play a huge role in the way Atlanta turned out, our last oval points race. And we saw Hawken pit earlier in that one to get the big lead. And Luke Canup was able to pit later and ended up passing him with about 10 laps to go and won that race. So if this stays green between now and the checkered flag, when you pit is going to matter.
For the 12 of Lawson Peel, what lessons does he learn from that Atlanta race to be able to structure his strategy to get around the 98? Hawken has been in clean air all race long. If you put him in dirty air, maybe things will change. But Peel losing a different line here in 3 and 4, trying to get some of that clean air on his radiator. Fight still for 7th place behind them as Lautenschlager and Colin Forster go at it. Back to turn 1.
It looks like he's going to have to get a really solid run off of turn 2 and then try and really arc 3 and 4 to help his front straightaway, because even with Hawken running a lower line in 3 and 4, he pulled away from him on the front straightaway, which is very impressive. As there you see Forster now looking to the inside of the 13 of Lautenschlager, who's running the outside lane and not really making much use of it. That I'll give credit where credit is due. That bottom lane tonight in 3 and 4 has worked a lot better, as almost contact off of turn 4. That bottom lane in 3 and 4, Kenneth, is working a lot better than it has in previous seasons, and a lot of that probably has to do with the updated track characteristics.
Of course, the bottom lane really kicking in at this sector of the races. There's Forster way loose under his teammate, Lance Hill. This is the bout for 8th place on the racetrack, and Scott Healy behind them. Eric Schaefer, who's trying to mount his comeback, definitely saved by the bell with the yellow flag coming out when it did, as he was trapped in 13th place. And all of these guys just trying to scramble around for position. It gets really sketchy, and Forrester able to give away his position just to make sure it's a single file entrance into the corner and exit. And this is one of those tracks, Francisco, that you don't pass in the corners because of the narrowness that we talked about earlier on in the show. This is one of those tracks where if you are going to make a pass, you set it up on the straightaways. That's where you put yourself in place for the other driver to say, okay, that driver's either on the inside or outside, and then that's when you put the pass in motion.
And that's mainly for 1 and 2 because it's such a fast corner. If you're on board right now with Forster, you see just how fast the corner is. And this is already after about 5 laps on the tires. On brand new tires or even in qualifying, it's a lot faster. You're going through the corner and it's extremely fast. You do not want to go side by side. But here in 3 and 4, where you slow down, you use the brakes, you could run that chance a little bit more. Yes, it is narrow, but at least the speeds allow it to be a little bit more controllable than it would be in 1 and 2. You could set yourself up a lot better. But how about the 21 of Ethan Fonseca, Kenneth? He's already driven his way back up into the top 5 after having that moment entering pit road and missing the pit lane and having to go around another lap. There he is in front of his BBR teammate, Jaden Porter, and he's trying to see if he can catch up to the 48 of AJ Green.
The driver who resides in San Jose, California, has definitely made a lot of statements in his first season in the 4 Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. Has been able to pick up 2 wins. His most recent came at Bristol. That stunning showdown between himself and Lawson Peel went to his victory. Michigan didn't find itself in the same vein. Ran side by side with Eric Schaefer all race long. Great fight between those two all the way to the start-finish line at the checkered flag. Just barely short of what would have been his 3rd win on the season. And for Moreno, he told to me earlier about changing the number to 21. Didn't really ask him all that much why he changed it from 43, but 21, I guess, a brand new direction that Moreno wants to take. Is fittingly enough, there's his teammate behind him, Jaden Porter.
And during our break, he was celebrating a birthday. Yeah, sure, it might not have been his 21st birthday, but he is now 20 years old. He is going to be 21 now in the year 2024, so I guess that makes a lot more sense. But still, celebrated a birthday over our holiday break. So happy birthday, happy late birthday to our driver Ethan Fonseca, and he's doing a good job trying to recover from what that mistake was under the green flag. Right now, doing a decent enough job getting back into the top 5. And there you see the 64, Scott Healy. He's right behind the 99 of Colin Forster. Lance Hill following suit, and not too much passing going on. But there you see Eric Schaefer just a little bit further back. He's trying to recover from that fuel issue that happened just before his pit stop, where he ran out of fuel and was coasting through the pit lane. He's having a little bit harder of a job because he has a lot more cars than he has to pass. He lost a lot more positions because of no fuel pressure entering the pit lane. So he has a bit ways to go, and it does look like that 13 is holding up the field more, because look at that big gap he has in front of him, and look how many cars are lined up behind him.
Yeah, they are all looking to get around this AMD Ryzen Radeon number 13. That's also a throwback to himself, his first season appearance in the 4 Wide Racing TJ's Team Series, as they about make contact, entering 3 and 4. Look at the first 2x2 action we've seen since the restart. It's getting crazy up here at a turn 4.
And they're going to stay side by side in 1 and 2 because there's no real chance for someone to let up. Scott Healy's going to be side by side. Eventually finds a hole in front of Lance Hill. There wasn't one there, but he made it work just behind Colin Forster after no pass was going to be able to be made. And Forster looking to the inside of Lautenschlager is not going to be able to make one there. But a lot of aggressive moves being made out here as we are just past the halfway point in this race. Schaefer once again looking at the bottom of Lance Hill, trying to see if there's anything that can be done.
And that 13 is just significantly congesting this traffic. Forrester wants to direct it, but for the moment, it's just going to create a nose-to-tail traffic situation. No one's really able to get around. Look at Kyle Benson on the back end of this in 12th. We saw him inside the top 5. Now having to deal with all of this carnage in front of him, building up with this single file train. And if you're Benson, what's the first thought that comes to your mind when you think about all these cars just holding you up from getting to everyone else in front? Look at that gap.
That it could be a problem. It could very well be a problem with how aggressive they're getting. You don't want to get involved in an issue, but you also have to think about your race. Right now, there is 65 laps to go. If you want to get a good result in this race, you have to pass these cars, but you have to do it patiently, and that's where the danger is. How patient are you? How patient can you be with these guys? There's certain guys that are a little bit slower than maybe you are, but you have to be patient with them and their ability to control their car at this point in the run, because maybe they don't have the same level of controllability. Maybe their car's a little bit looser or tighter than yours is, and you have to play into that because eventually that's where a crash could happen. But I see the single file action, Kenneth. If you multiply that by about 5 lanes and the same amount of cars, maybe more, and maybe a lot slower of a speed, that's what I see on my way to work on the 826.
That's what I see on my way to school, too. When I get to North Miami, that's immediately what I see on the turnpike, or even on any other highway that I take on the way there. Schaefer plucks his nose in on the inside of the 1. He's sideways out of turn 4. He will be able to hold on to it, but not without hitting the inside wall. So it's a night gone from bad to worse for the points leader.
No caution.
And we will stay green. Even worse for the 3. Might be at mercy of being put a lap down.
Wow.
And the
shocking turn of events
in this long line of cars. Take a look.
We were just talking about how patient can you be, and right there, once again, making the move on Lance Hill. It looks like he clips that apron a little bit. It sends him up the track a little bit more than maybe he expected it to. Makes contact with Lance Hill and spins down the inside of the racetrack. Let's see if we can get an onboard look to confirm that being the case. So that's from behind. So we'll get a look here to see exactly what happens. So Eric Schaefer is going to go to the inside of Lance Hill. Right there, he hits the white dashed lines, barely makes door-to-door contact, and it's going to spin him out and just barely makes contact. Not a lot of damage, Kenneth, but the fact that no caution comes out and he had to correct the car a little bit, that's the damage in of itself.
And you could tell that he was in deep water immediately, and he realized that as soon as he made that contact and that car made the yaw angle, you can hear him go right out of the throttle and just hop on the brakes to lock it up, just praying that he wouldn't hit that inside wall. He does. Now he's trapped all the way back in 19th place, last car on the lead lap, about 23 seconds back of the race leader, who's now coming out of turn 4 to cross the start-finish line, Brandon Hawken. So the 3 car in deep trouble here at lap 86. We mentioned the mistake of pit road and losing the fuel. Maybe you could throw out the possibility that, yeah, it was around lap 50-something, coming to lap 64 when the first yellow came out. You could rebound on a mistake like that. But now that you're pretty much knee-deep into this race, how difficult is it going to be for Schaefer to come back in this one?
It's going to be difficult because it's a lot later in the race, but he still needs a caution flag, that's for sure, because he has damage on his race car. He's not going to just drive up through the field from where he is right now as if he had no damage and somehow win this race. He's going to need a yellow flag once again to get everybody equal, set damage, and get back to it. And even then, it's still going to be not an easy task for him. So right now, it's about damage limitation. He is the points leader right now, narrowly over his teammate. So if he wants to preserve that, he has to stay running and hope that either something happens to his teammate or that Brandon Hawken stays in position to try and win this race. Because Schaefer can still make up a couple of positions. There's still plenty of laps left in the race for that. But I think his contention for the race win right now is looking very bleak, especially if we stay green.
And when you also consider what I mentioned earlier in the show, Francisco, the fact that Brandon Hawken is dominating this race. He did the same at Watkins Glen. He's a driver that even if he wins every single race from here on out, he probably won't make the playoffs just because of the 60% rule, just the things you need, the requirements to make it to the postseason here in this series. With Brandon Hawken throwing a wrench in all of that and forbidding some drivers for getting max points to get a race win, it just really shakes things up, whether you're Schaefer, Lawson Peel, or any driver trying to get back into playoff territory. It's just become a big situation And for Schaefer, we'll see if he can claw back, but it is going to take a while. He desperately needs a caution, like you said, Francisco. Now, while the DBR number 3 Chevrolet is kind of out of the mix for now, 2 of the DBR Chevrolets are in 2nd and 3rd, Lawson being one of them, but the teammate, Brandon Banks in the 54, is the other. We've seen a really quiet night out of the 54 of Brandon Banks, and there's a look at the throwback he's running tonight on the right side of your screen. That's a throwback to Buddy Baker's 1988 Red Baron Oldsmobile, as there's the caution coming out.
And that it's Eric Schaefer needs cautions to help him back in this race, and he's getting them right now. Another yellow flag comes out, and I think something happened to I'm not sure who it was. It looks like Benson Slow on the racetrack. There was a car that came down pit road under the green flag. I couldn't make out who it was, but it was a white car that came onto the pit road just a lap or so before this. But let's look and see exactly what happened here. So it's back in the same group. It's Kyle Benson now to the inside of Lance Hill this time. Colin Forrester just in front. You see gets under the white lines just a bit. Hill's almost in the wall, and as they come off of 4, it looks like Forrester gets into the wall, and then the 38 moves up into Hill, and that sends him sideways towards Forrester. They both spin down the racetrack.
Get a better overhead look at this. So these 3 cars going into turns 3 and 4. And mind you, same part of the track where Eric Schaefer found trouble. 99 goes right into the wall, and the 1 does make the corner, but looks like they both slide up. The 38 specifically gets into the 1, and that's where this whole fiasco just sends the 99 and the 38 into the inside safer barrier. Now, tough break for both of them. They were having pretty good races up until this point. It looks like this is going to tarnish it for a little bit.
And that's not what Forrester needed. We documented he was 20th in points coming into this race, Kenneth. He needs good runs, and something like this is not going to help his case.
For the Jacksonville, Florida native, looks like he's going to have to be on the back foot here. As drivers do come down pit road, there's Brandon Hawkin leading everyone in. Lawson Peel, Brandon Banks, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, AJ Green, you name it, the entire field coming in. And this is really going to solve the problem, Francisco, of having to pit in a really awkward stance. But we'll see what happens.
I don't know, man. I don't know, Kenneth. I think these guys might be a little bit short. I mean, if you look at the lap count,
54 laps?
Yeah, I mean, that's right on the cusp. It's certainly doable, but I'm not sure if there's been anybody that's ran that far so far today. So certainly a question mark towards it.
Everyone's really been playing it safe. If you really think about it on strategy, they've really marked it around 48 to 50. That's where a lot of these guys came down pit road on the opening green flag run. Look at this monstrous stop by Brandon Banks. We'll get him to second right in front of Ethan Fonseca Moreno, and nowhere to be seen is Lawson Peel, clocking in at 15 seconds. He's back to 7th.
Wow. Must have overshot his pit stall is what I would guess there. As there you see, that's the 77 out there on the racetrack.
Looked like he stayed out, but he is coasting that Chevrolet to pit road, making his debut tonight here at Darlington. Looks like he'll come in without a problem, but really rather slow. But yeah, Peel with a pretty tough stop there. I can imagine, Francisco, it was probably what you mentioned there. Just missed his pick box.
See if we can see it again. So here's the entries on the pit road. There you see Peel. He comes in second. So he's right behind your race leader. And there you see, there's his pit sign. And right there, it has to back up. Yep.
Oh, and he had to back up big time.
Wow.
Yeah, it looked like he rolled a little bit. Didn't look like it was going to be that harmful, but yeah, had to back it up further. So the 12 car with a pretty significant mistake, going to take him out of the top 5. And so for Peel, adding on to the list of DBR mistakes and some of the bad luck that's hit them so far this evening, but it will keep Brandon Hawkin so far flawless tonight at lap 93 in the race lead for the moment. No one's really been able to get around him and nor really beat him on strategy either, just the way this race has gone. So Hawkin leading this race for now. Looks like the lights are off on the iRacing official pace car. And before we continue, while we're under caution, Francisco, do want to give a heartfelt word out to our friend CJ Munier, who could not race tonight, had a surgery recently, so we wish for his speedy recovery and coming back to the 4Wide Racing Series soon. But this is the throwback. He was scheduled to run this evening. This is a Terry Labonte throwback to 2003. You can see how good of a job the 89 of CJ Munier did, certainly, or his paint scheme designer did, making that car look sharp as always. Unfortunately, CJ not with us racing tonight. We wish him well and his family, of course, on the speedy recovery for the surgery, but still wanted to show the throwback that he was scheduling for tonight's event.
Wishing him the best in his recovery. A happy New Year to him and his family. And we hope that the surgery obviously went well and that it was for a good thing. And we hope to see him out here on the racetrack soon. I got one coming up myself, but you know, I hope that it goes well for him. And here we're now approaching the green flag, Kenneth. It's going to be 52 laps to go, and it's going to be very interesting to see where these guys land on fuel if it goes green, because it's going to be the longest run of the day. Brandon Banks is not getting that great of a launch. That's going to open the door for Ethan Fonseca to move to second.
So Hawken clears, there's Moreno to the inside, and that's payday for the 21 as the 54 stacks everyone behind him. AJ Green going side by side with Scott Healy. Porter way out of shape at a turn 2.
Porter was able to save it, though. He's going to be side by side with Trevor Haley as Healy gets into the back of AJ Green. Lawson Peel diving low to the slightly less banked area of the racetrack. He's going to get a little bit loose in the process and lose out to Lance Hill. Hill gets into the wall, though. They'll be side by side back to turn 1.
We talk about a sketchy turn 2 exit. It's the same in turn 4. It's got a couple of drivers off guard, but the 12 makes the clean pass regardless. The defending champ moves to the inside of Hill. That's for 7th place. And of course, Peel, we saw him overshoot his pit box. He's on the comeback, while Moreno, half a second back from the race leader, trying to change the script. He's got everybody single file behind them, and the question is, how do you stop Brandon Hawken from winning this one?
Well, we've seen the BBR guys be some of the best drivers on long runs at saving tires, and I think that's what he's trying to play into right now, is save the fuel, save the tires right now, and pounce in the closing 15 or so laps of this race with better fuel situation and better tires than the race leader.
21, we'll keep an eye on. Looks like he might be clutching and coasting there in the corner, but we'll keep an eye on that. 21 on board with him and Moreno's machine. And just look at the gap back there, 0.7 of a second. Last lap clocking in at 29.5 for Moreno, 29.357 for the race leader. And Hawken shows you just how good clean air is, especially here at Darlington, with how tough it is to drive. But for sure, his dominance and quickness over the course of this race, as there's Peel closing in on the 64 of Scott Healy. Might have a battle on our hands for 5th.
And he's not out of this race yet, Kenneth. We've talked about it many times. Lawson Peel is just the guy you have to keep your eye on until the checkered flag waves, because he can always just out of nowhere show up right there in the battle for the win. And I would not count him out of it just yet, no matter what. He's going to have to pass Scott Healy to make up the position here, and then eventually the likes of AJ Green and Brandon Banks before he gets up into the top 3. But right now, he's just taking his time, knowing that he has just under 50 laps to do it. And 50 laps here is a long time, Kenneth, because the tires wear a lot. The run slows down. You have to hyper-focus on certain things with the car and how loose it can be because of the rear tires and how those wear. But just because it's 47 laps to go doesn't mean that there's not much time remaining. It's pretty lengthy.
For strategy's sake, too, I can imagine we're going to be looking at a lot of drivers clutching and coasting, and I'm pretty sure for the 21 of Moreno, that's what he was doing. You can imagine for the 98 of Brandon Hawken, that he's probably saving 2 and maybe giving up this time just because he is. We're right on board with Moreno, and we'll get the full details of the story. But because you mentioned that 54-lap run that we had off of the caution flag, it could get really close.
Of course, I mean, we saw the first run. I believe it was Schaefer went 50 laps, and he had a fuel issue. And most of the field, I think, did about 51. How close they were to making it, I'm not sure. But it's certainly a question mark. It's certainly something that they're going to have to save fuel for. It's not a yes or no, really. They're going to have to try and do something to make sure that they can get to the end of the race, especially if there's a late caution.
And you're looking at Moreno's on board now with Brandon Hawken, who's in the clean air, has given up a lot of time to second place. He's up to about 0.2 over the 21. And there's Hawken, so that's probably why he's losing the time. He's clutching and coasting at the entrance of 3 and 4. Now, he is wasting the most fuel, by the way, Francisco, by being out here in first place. While everyone else can handle with a bit of the draft, Hawken has not had that premium luxury feature all night long, so he has to fend for himself out here.
I don't think it's so much the draft, Kenneth, here, because there's not that much of a draft effect. But generally speaking, rule of law will say the person whose first place is the fastest, and by being the fastest, you burn more fuel. So as you go through the field, generally speaking, there will be less burn in terms of the fuel, in terms of the fuel rate consumption. So as you move through the field, guys will have better fuel situations. They have to lift more and all that sort of stuff. So right now, Brandon Hawkin, of course, has the worst fuel situation, but that's not by much. That's just marginal, and that comes down to the exact inputs that the drivers are putting. There you see Jesse Prees back inside the top 10, just behind Trevor Haley, trying to see if he can keep another top 10 going and maintain his good points position. There you see his throwback. I can't say I've seen this throwback used before, Kenneth.
I don't know, me neither. It's been quite a while since I've seen this scheme really anywhere. This is Jimmy Spencer's 1995 Camel Smokin' Joe's. That's a Ford Thunderbird. Of course, a Chevrolet Camaro that Jesse Prees is running. One of the first throwback paint schemes shared in the 4Y Discord. As I was kind of scavenging through all the Discord channels and looking at the paint share one, just trying to eye in on all the drivers using the throwback scheme, so we got a bit of a head start and we can put some of the pictures on the broadcast for you tonight to see. But Jesse Prees with a really beautiful Camel Smokin' Joe's Chevrolet, and he's running 10th where he started. Pretty consistent night for the DBR Chevrolet of Prees.
As far as Joes are concerned, I'll take my Joe to go, if you know what I mean.
I don't, and I really don't want
You
to ask.
don't?
I'm not.
Oh, it's nothing bad. That's just what they call Flanagan's takeout.
Okay.
It's if you look at the parking lot, it says Joe to go there.
I thought it was going down. I thought we were going to get taken off the airwaves there for a moment.
No.
But Jesse Prees with a really good run so far tonight here from Darlington Raceway. Of course, the driver out of Wabash, Indiana. Just a really dark horse driver we've talked about for sure over the last several seasons in 4-wide competition. A guy who usually doesn't dominate races, sometimes is in contention for the win, but even if he doesn't go to the checkered flag first, he is a driver to watch for, always a top 10 runner. Consistency has always been key, especially in his charges for the playoffs and championships. You can never really count out Jesse Prees when it comes to racing in this series. Always has something up his sleeve. Now for his dominant teammate, Eric Schaefer, he has worked his way up to 11th. Clean pass on Tyler Murray. We also just got Ryan Pandiccio past him. Murray struck the outside wall in turns 1 and 2, but the cautions did help Schaefer get back in line, have a rather clean Piedmont Chevrolet, and can try and chase down the drivers in front.
And to give Jesse Prees his flowers, of course, Kenneth, it wasn't always that way for him. He's of course, he hasn't visited victory lane in the Cups in the 4-wide racing top tier series yet, but he's always been there for a long time and slowly improved with every single season. If you look back to the early races compared to now, he's improved just slightly every single season. And that's really all you could want as a driver, is to show improvement, and he's been able to do that every season. Eventually started making the playoffs just a handful of seasons ago, and now he's in the top 10 in points, and with this points format, he could have a career year as far as the points result.
And with the big difference in this playoff system in comparison to what we've seen in seasons past, for those who haven't fully tuned into this series since the drop of the green flag at Auto Club Speedway to kick off the season, we go by consistency only throughout the entire year. We are not looking for win and you're in playoff situation. Obviously, points are reset when the playoffs begin at Chicagoland Speedway, but if we're talking about qualifying through the regular season, it's all about how you perform from race 1 all the way to the end of the regular season. So it's all about consistency. You're right, Francisco, for a guy like Jesse Prees, consistency helps you long term. It doesn't just give you a spot in the playoffs as everybody else locks their way in with wins. You're looking at potentially putting yourself up as a formidable challenge to the rest of the field, being a guy that's always there.
Of course, and it rewards those that are consistent, Kenneth, whilst at the same time making it worthwhile for the other 15 or so guys that maybe weren't top 5 in points the entire year. So it's a good balance. I like that idea. I used it for my series there for the last couple of seasons. So I think it's an interesting dynamic. We don't see it too much right now. We mostly see the elimination style playoffs used in other leagues or other top tier series. So it's a nice, fresh, nice. I can't speak. It's nice to see it being differently for once, and I can't wait to see once we get into the playoffs what it's like and how it's presented to us. But here you see the battle for the lead. Ethan Fonseca just about half a second off, and he's kind of stayed there for the last couple of laps. Now, I don't know how much they're saving, Kenneth, but as we are approaching 34 laps to go in this race, they have to be saving just a little bit at least.
Well, you speak of playoff drivers that we'll see in the postseason. Moreno is one of them, currently third in the point standings, about 127 points away from that 14th spot in the cut line, held by Jeff No, the rookie driver for MTC Esports, who unfortunately isn't racing time, but Moreno has been so consistent all season long, and at Watkins Glen, had a pretty big comeback race where he fought tooth and nail with competition around them, ended up inside the top 5. Tonight, looking for his 3rd win of the season, would be the most by anybody so far in Season 6 of the series. Still half a second back, and you can tell Francisco not entirely sure that he's saving behind the wheel of the race car. Not sure if Hawken is in comparison. Looks like he still is clutching and coasting, but stays up front regardless.
It's an interesting chess match that's going on here, Kenneth, because maybe what Ethan is trying to do is close into Brandon Hawkins' lead enough to force Hawken to not save. Maybe that's the game he's trying to play. As there you see Peel gets by AJ Green now. That'll put Lawson Peel up into the 4th spot. So Peel slowly climbing his way through the field. There you see Brandon Banks just about a second in front of him before you see the 21 of Ethan Fonseca Moreno. Scott Healy once again is trying to see if he can make a pass on AJ Green. He's not been strong on the long runs here tonight, but he's going to have to tuck in line. And there you see Jaden Porter, Kenneth, has had a quiet night, but if he can walk away with the top 5, that's exactly the kind of result he wants. And there you see Lance Hill, after being involved in the two incidents that brought out the caution flag here tonight, Kenneth, relatively no damage on his race car, and he's in the top 10.
These guys are just holding on to what they've got. Top 10 runs, that's what they can muster. This is good news when you come out of one of the most difficult tracks to drive here in the sim and over the schedule. Healy is able to get right around the 48 of AJ Green, but it's going to invite the Mountain Dew Chevrolet of Jaden Porter, who we've talked about, Francisco, as having somewhat of a down year in comparison to what we've seen before. Porter, obviously defending series champion. We had a lot of expectations for him, as, of course, would you have with a defending champ? You're going to have a lot of expectations on the way coming towards you. And for Porter, it's been sort of a struggle, trying to get his foot set and just trying to make sure that he is able to get by. But as the season has rolled around and as we get into 2024, excitement and optimism pretty high in this 28 camp, because the finishes are starting to come together. Consistency is starting to become more easily, available for the 28. And he's starting to build up runs that are quiet but are really effective.
But that's exactly what his championship run was built on, Kenneth. It was those kind of results. He wasn't a driver that would go out there and dominate the race. He would collect a win or two on the season, but those are the results that would prove Jaden Porter on a consistent basis, where he would just stay quiet. You don't hear his name called too much, but there he is in the top 5 on the results page.
He runs P6 right now, trying to catch up to Scott Healy in the 64. Here we'll take a look at 11th place, Ryan Pandicio, not with a throwback paint scheme tonight, and obviously not entirely in good spirits to know that 2 of his Skybox Racing teammates, Curtis Kelly and Adam Alashire, were involved in a pretty significant crash earlier on this evening. Pandicio running pretty well. One of those guys as well in the rookie class, Francisco, to think about playoff territory. He's 18 points above the 14th spot. It's in the last spots to get into the postseason in Season 6. And Pandicio, much like some of the other rookies in the series, Trevor Haley, who sits right behind him. You look at Jeff No making a statement in their rookie seasons. Moreno, Luke Canup, you name it. All of those guys who have been able to do so well. Pandicio's one of them and having a pretty quiet night at Darlington.
It's been the thing with this league, Kenneth. Rookies just always have a way of showing up when the lights are bright and just being able to drive out there like they're veterans. And this season's been no different. We have a really deep rookie class, and almost half of the playoff grid is consisting of rookie drivers. And you'd think with just every single season that goes by, you think, oh man, with these guys now becoming veterans, I wonder who are the rookies that are going to take the place, and they just keep showing up.
This is arguably, Francisco, the deepest rookie class we've ever had in this series.
I agree.
Season 3 might be up there with them, with the likes of AJ Green, Colin Forrester, all of the Stonks Motorsports guys that took the field by storm in Season 3. When you look at Season 6 in comparison, a lot more drivers, a lot more talent spread around, and you've got a pretty threatening class that could fight for the championship sooner than later as we move forward into 2024. You look back at the battle for the race lead because it's starting to heat up. It was sort of stagnating around 0.4 of a second, but it has closed in quite a bit. Ethan Fonseca Moreno was starting to build up the pace here with 23 laps to go, but he needs to find a way around Hawken because catching up to Hawken is one thing. We've seen Lawson Peel do it before. Getting around him hasn't happened at all tonight, so it's a feat that the 21 is going to have to take with a lot of patience.
Issue for the 12 car of Lawson Peel, Kenneth. He was running up inside the top 5, but just now noticing he's now a lap down in the 19th spot, so I'm not exactly sure what happened there. No damage on his race car, but he's now 19th and a lap down.
Looks like he came down pit road. So this is the 12 car. Looks like this is him merging out of turn 2. So either might have been a fuel scenario where Peel didn't really think he can make it.
I don't think that. I don't know if that's the one, Kenneth. I think most likely what would have happened is that he didn't get the car full under the caution, considering he missed the pit stall.
Yeah, it might have been the case. So Lawson Peel goes from a pretty decent outing, running in the top 5. He's down to 18th, a lap down to the leaders. And while we were looking at that replay, Moreno looked to the inside of Brandon Hawken, made that attempt. It was not successful, but he's starting to show his worth. Moreno strong on this long run. We'll see what he can do. Coming at 21 to go.
Schaefer's had problems tonight, but he's recovered, and he's now back up into 6th after passing Jesse Prees. Lawson Peel just now ran into some issues, but he's down now up into 14th. Looks like several guys are actually coming down pit road, Kenneth, so it might not have been an issue for Lawson Peel. I think some guys are genuinely trying this alternative strategy because they don't think they can make it.
And this is Jesse Prees here in the 00 who comes in as well. So second DVR driver to enter pit road, and we're not seeing a lot of them come in together. Seems to all be single car instances where they're all entering pit road. Looks like Eric Schaefer's going to follow, so now make it 3 DBR Chevrolets to come into pit road with 20 laps to go.
The thing is, if I'm your 2 leaders, I would consider staying out because at this point, if you pit, you're going to be behind Lawson Peel. Lawson Peel pitted about 3 laps ago. He's going to jump all of you if you pit. So I think if you're Ethan Fonseca or Brandon Hawken, I think you're committed to staying out because by coming in, you're going to end up behind Lawson Peel.
But how far do you go back in that strategy if you ignore Hawken and Moreno? Brandon Banks in 3rd, AJ Green 4th, Lance Hill 5th.
Well, we know some guys are going to stay out. Not everyone's going to come down pit road. So it just depends on what you feel is going to do you best for an overall race result. These guys are still 1 lap down to the race leader, and there's now 19 laps to go in this race. I doubt, I mean, it wouldn't be impossible, but I doubt they'd make up the 29 or so or 30 seconds that they would have to go around the racetrack and passing other cars in 18 or so laps in order to pass for the win.
It just doesn't seem feasible. Looks like I agree with you there, as actually it appears that our leaders are coming in, and Moreno got around Brandon Hawken. So a change for the race lead for the first time tonight. Now it could change at the exit of pit road. Brandon Banks has the lead for now with 18 to go, but a pivotal pass and a pivotal entry to pit road.
Interesting. Didn't expect them to do that one, but maybe they couldn't make it to the end of the race, so we'll just see. It looks like Hawken went with that conservative pit entry, and I think Fonseca went with the more traditional entry we see at Darlington Race when he gets to straight line the entry, brake a little bit more aggressively, and he's allowed him to make an easy pass with minimal effort, and he's going to exit in front of Hawken as well. But I think both of these guys are going to be well behind Lawson Peel.
So over this 146-lap race, Brandon Hawken has never surrendered, and this time he's going to be in dirty air with a car in front of him. Ethan Fonseca Moreno might have the net race lead. That, of course, like you say, Francisco, if Lawson Peel is able to stick this one out, as there's his teammate Brandon Banks, and will allow the 12 to unlap himself. Most likely here in 1 and 2 he does, as Ryan Pandicio falls back to 4th. He enters pit road as well.
Yeah, but just they're so far behind Lawson Peel, Kenneth, with 16 laps to go. If that was the strategy call you wanted to make, you had to do it as soon as the 12 car pitted or fully commit to staying out. If you do something like they did, it just makes it hard for you to try and catch back up unless something happens. I think there's just not enough time for them to close that gap with a 4-lap tire difference.
And it's all going to matter on when these guys come in. Brandon Banks, one of them, Lautenschlager the second, Patrick Thompson, who's running the highest he's been all night long inside the top 3, Colin Forrester, who had his teammate Lance Hill pit around a lap or so ago. The 99 still remains out on track, so this race is blown wide open, Francisco. It looked like a Brendan Hawkins show from start to finish. Now you add in pretty risky strategy in the late goings of this race. You've got a completely different ballgame.
I don't know which one to go with. I thought I was sold on the staying out strategy if you were the top 2, but they both came down pit road. So, again, this is why being in that driver's seat matters. They have a lot more information available to them as far as what's going on in real time compared to what I'm able to access and what I have right in front of me. But maybe they feel like they couldn't go all the way to the end, and so there you see a good run off of turn 2 is going to allow Brandon Hawkins to just gain that gap a little bit more on Ethan Fonseca as they're catching up to more lap traffic. But right here, it's going to be at a bad spot of the corner. It's going to catch Brandon Banks right off of turn 4, kind of kill the momentum a little bit. But judging it, I think they're about 6 or so seconds off of Lawson Peel, give or take. I'll try and see if I can let the scoreboard cycle out again here. But Lawson Peel's almost back into the top 5. He's about 20 seconds off your race leader. He's 21 seconds off your race leader, approaching 12 laps to go. I don't think he'll make up that gap as long as he can stay out.
We'll see, but of this moment, Banks, Lautenschlager, Thompson, and Forster, they could still stay out, but if they do come in, there is going to be a huge switch around. These drivers are entering lap 40 to 41 on their stint. If you're thinking about Lautenschlager, Thompson, and a bit of Colin Forrester, it's around 43 laps for the race leader right here in Brandon Banks, who's dealing with a lot of lap traffic, of course, because all the fresh tire cars are zooming past him like he's standing still. But this Red Baron Pizza, number 54, is eyeing in on what could be his second race win of Season 6 if this strategy stays put.
And it's not the first time we've seen Brandon Banks try some sort of strategy like this, Kenneth. We saw him attempt it at Phoenix last season, and it wasn't going to work, but we saw what happened on the final lap with Lance Hill and Kyle Benson, and it magically worked itself out. But it's not the first time we've seen him attempt it, and considering that was the end result, why not try it again?
And for Craig Lautenschlager, Patrick Thompson, staring down some of their best finishes of the season. If they stay out here coming to 10 laps to go, this is going to be a monumental switch up to what we've seen all night long. Darlington always has the curveballs, and now it looks like we're going to be throwing the final pitches here very soon. Top 4 still, Banks, Lautenschlager, Thompson, and Forrester. Lawson Peel is the first car on fresh tires. And then you look at Scott Healy, Jaden Porter, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, and Brandon Hawkins. This race has completely changed up. And if a caution comes out, it could further change the game. And there's Banks getting passed by Murray. It'll be 9 laps to go, this time by.
The gap's down to about 13 seconds now with 9 laps to go. It's nip and tuck, Kenneth. I'll say that much, but I just don't know, considering he has to also pass race cars in the process, especially slower cars. I don't know if he'll get there in time. I think it'll be close, but I'm not sure if Lawson Peel will actually get to Brandon Banks, assuming Brandon Banks doesn't run out of fuel.
And also, too, Craig Lautenschlager is 6/10 behind Brandon Banks and closing. He's putting in faster lap times, so not only does Banks have to think about the emerging threat of Lawson Peel, possibly in the last 8 or so laps, he needs to think about the man right behind him, as Banks is way slow out of turn 2, and here comes Lautenschlager.
Maybe Banks is saving more fuel than Lautenschlager right now. How much does Lautenschlager have?
And Patrick Thompson is running third.
They're all right there.
He can get to the inside of the 54 for second.
Banks is definitely saving a lot more fuel right now.
What an unbelievable turn of events. We're riding on board with Banks as Craig Lautenschlager takes the lead to 7 laps to go.
9.5 seconds. That's the gap between Peel and Craig Lautenschlager right now.
It is crunching down, and there's even more lap traffic. We saw Craig Parks in the 17 get by, Ryan Pandicio, and now there's Jesse Prees moving onwards as there's the 13 sliding through 3 and 4. He will catch 6 laps to go, and that gap down to 8.9 seconds, and counting seconds at this juncture.
Can Patrick Thompson get up there and possibly pass the 13 for this race win?
Oh, this is going to be huge. It's half a second, and Patrick Thompson is also closing in. So we're looking at multiple drivers all still actively saving to get to the checkered flag, and either of them saving differently than the other and creating this difference in speed. It's still within half a second. Lautenschlager will have 5 laps to go. Gap is under 8 seconds between Peel and everyone else ahead of him.
8 seconds up to your race leader. He'll probably catch Brandon Banks. That's a 5-second gap with 5 to go. Ethan Fonseca just still ahead of Brandon Hawk, and those two are going to end up battling for a top 5 position because I don't believe they'll be catching up to the 12 car in time. So Lawson Peel absolutely trying to throw everything he can, and there you see right there the proof of that. Gets a Darlington stripe right there off of turn 2 as Patrick Thompson continues to close the gap.
And Moreno and Hawken, both of them are catching up to Lawson Peel. Remember the difference in tires, that's 7 laps between Moreno and Hawken and Lawson Peel, so it is going to get miraculously close. And while the 12 can get here, if the 4 laps are miraculous enough, we've got the 21 and the 98 ready to take the position away and run at it for the race win. Now the question is, do these guys run out of fuel before it's all over, as the gap has extended just a little bit between Thompson and Lautenschlager? 3 left from Darlington.
And I think they're all catching up to Brandon Banks right now. So they're all having to navigate Brandon Banks now with 3 laps to go. They see Banks right there. I think he'll make it easy for Peel to get by, just considering the alternative strategies they're on. So they see just the pace difference, almost gets into the back of him and actually makes slight contact. The bumper doesn't come off as Peel gets into the wall again. That's not going to exactly help his race car. There you see Ethan Fonseca and the 98 of Brandon Hawk, and they're not going to catch up to these guys, I don't think, in time, Kenneth. There's 2 laps to go.
2 laps left, and the gap is 6.3 seconds and closing. Moreno and Hawkins still have a chance to fight for 3rd. Meanwhile, Patrick Thompson still half a second off of the 13. And Lautenschlager definitely has been close multiple times to getting wins at Darlington. We have touted him as one of the most skilled drivers at this type of track where the surface is worn out, where the tires wear, and after not seeing him basically all race long, this 13 car will eye down the white flag here from the lady in black. Patrick Thompson behind by 0.4 of a second. Lawson Peel within 5.5. But you can imagine there's not enough time to get to the checkered flag first. If you're Lawson Peel in the 12, good enough for a top 3 spot. And while Craig Lautenschlager has been hanging around all evening long, he's going to come away with his first win if he holds on. Patrick Thompson with a last charge in turn 4. But the 13 of Craig Lautenschlager is a winner in Season 6.
And Patrick Thompson threw everything at it on the final lap, Kenneth. He was half a second back, and he almost gets to the back bumper in 3 and 4, and even off of turn 4. So great job there by Patrick, trying to give it all he can. But how about Craig Lautenschlager, Kenneth? Was riding that winless streak for a pretty decent while now. I don't recall him going to victory lane last season. I believe his last victory came at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in Season 4 in that showdown with Jaden Porter. So it's nice to see Craig Lautenschlager coming away with a win. One of the original drivers of this league is able to take the victory on throwback night.
His last intermediate oval win, that was the Charlotte one that got him into the Championship 5. His last win came at Talladega to also get him into that championship round. Craig Lautenschlager shows up here in our first race of 2024, pulls off the strategy masterclass, and for the first time in a while, Craig Lautenschlager enters Paul's setup shop victory lane.
And that's going to be another new race winner this season, Kenneth. And we mentioned this on the broadcast just before the race. He was below the cut line going into this race, so that's a huge win for him in terms of getting a boost of points to get above the cut line and secure a wild card spot, which could absolutely make a huge shakeup in terms of the overall points when you consider the fact if he falls outside the top 14, he's got that wild card secured.
Lautenschlager certainly elated after this huge win on strategy. And what a race. What a race this was. Certainly unfolded not in the way we anticipated, but it is Craig Lautenschlager with his first win of the season, and at this moment in time becomes the 9th different winner in the season from 2023 to 2024. 2024. Lounslugger the winner, Patrick Thompson right behind him in second. Gave it all that he could in the waning laps and especially into 3 and 4. We could have called Patrick Thompson a first-time winner tonight had it gone his way and had he had a little more time. Brandon Hawken surges to third, dominated the entirety of the race, but has to settle only for the third step of the podium. Lawson Peel on fresh tires behind in fourth. Scott Healy in fifth. Ethan Fonseca Moreno looked like a formidable challenger to Hawken for the race win. Then the strategy unfolded. Sixth is where he ends up in tonight's affair. Jaden Porter back in seventh. Consistent run for the defending series champion. AJ Green in the mellow yellow Supra is in eighth. His teammate Lance Hill resides in ninth. And how about the rookie Trevor Haley in his Ford EcoBoost Mac Kenseth throwback, rounding out the top 10.
Brandon Banks is going to bring it home in the 11th spot, trying the alternative strategy. Ryan Pandiccio, rookie, will finish in the 12th spot. Eric Schaefer finishes in 13th. Tyler Murray will finish in the 14th spot. Jesse Prees, after a solid run, will end up in 15th. Colin Forster will be 16th. Daniel Moore will finish in the 17th spot in his debut. Christopher Bishop will finish in 18th. Craig Parks will finish in the 19th spot. Kyle Benson, involved in that incident on the front straightaway, will finish 20th, 22 laps down. Eric Stewart will finish 21st. Adam Alashire will be in the 22nd position. Curtis Kelly, 23rd, with Michael Newbraw in 24th. Kevin D'Elia in 25th. Jacob Locklear in the 26th position. And Cody Kinsey rounding out your field after not taking the green flag. But also, a very important to note, Kenneth, is that this race tonight, we have our Bracket Challenge Championship round. Indeed, that's going to be the 21 of Ethan Fonseca versus the number 1 of Lance Hill. That's the showdown for the cash prize at the Kansas Speedway.
It's going to be big for the cash prize next week at America's Heartland, but we visit Victory Lane here at Darlington, where for the first time this season, it's Craig Lounslugger. And Craig, could you ever have imagined that with the way the race was going earlier tonight, that it would end in the way it would to give you your first win since last season at Talladega?
Definitely couldn't have predicted it. You don't want to speed on pit road, and then when you do, you don't expect a wild strategy call to win it all for you. But I guess that's what happened.
And after hanging around in this race for much of it, this strategy just comes out of nowhere. Brandon Banks ahead of you, Patrick Thompson behind you. What seems to run through your mind as you start hearing around you other drivers in the race lead coming to pit road while you guys, had that strategy to stay out? What's going through your head in that specific moment in time as the strategy unfolded?
I actually didn't start saving till about 5 or 10 laps into that run. I started noticing that the 99 was saving. So I thought, well, maybe if he thinks he can make it, I can possibly make it, because I knew I was close. I knew it was like 2 or 3 laps off. And I figured, well, maybe if I just start the strategy and if maybe a caution comes out, it won't hurt me too bad. And started saving and noticed it got under a lap that I needed to save, and kind of just ran with it from there. Just tried to maximize speed every lap, also saving fuel.
And talking about prior Darlington races that we've had, one of those that come to mind easily for me is season 3 with the Gen 6 cars, you and Kyle Benson going at it all the way to the very end, and you ultimately finished second, just short of the checkered flag there. Did any of those memories come about, or did it just feel like a fresh slate? And to have this win this season for the first time, how big is that for you and for your team as you guys move forward for the rest of 2024?
For me, it's huge. I've had a really bad stroke of races lately. Some of it my own fault, but I thought it was going to be another bad race with that speeding on pit road. But just the strategy paid off for me, and Darlington's long been possibly my favorite track. And I've always wanted to win here in 4 wide and never have, apart from the last Winter Series we did in the Xfinity car. But to win it in our Premier Series is definitely something I've been trying to do for a long time. It's always eluded me.
Well, Craig, it's with all elation that I call you a 4 wide racing winner here at the Darlington Raceway, finally in this wild strategy ending to the race. Huge congratulations to you and the team. Before we let you go, Kansas up next. We've got a bunch of different tracks to talk about. IRP, the big Indianapolis Oval, the Texas, Iowa, all of those tracks leading up to the playoffs. What stands out to you most as you get this win and have an opportunity to get closer to fighting for a championship again?
I think the next few tracks are going to be, up my alley. Kansas, I'm solid at, especially in this car, I think. And then I really like Indy on a car that doesn't have a horrific draft package. So, yeah, I think I got some good races ahead of me as I make that push towards the playoffs and put myself in a bit of a hole. But this win really helps that a lot.
Well, this is a monumental first step, that's for sure. Big win here from Darlington, South Carolina. Before we let you go, just one more question. Anyone you want to thank on tonight's victory?
I just want to thank our league owner, Tyler Murray, and all the guys that are coming out to these races. In seasons past, we only had like 16 people at Darlington or something crazy. So 26, maybe one of our lower amount of people we had this season, but it's still really solid for this league. And yeah, just everyone who comes out and the broadcasters and everything. So everybody a part of it.
Well, Craig, it's the honor that I get to have to call you a winner here at Darlington Raceway. Congratulations on the W in this strategy masterclass. We look forward to seeing you push for the playoffs further on in 2024. We hope you had a happy new year, and I'm sure this is just the extra firework to the celebration. Congratulations on the win tonight.
Thank you very much.
Craig Lautenslager in the 13 grabs his first win since Talladega last season. It has been quite a while, but the 13 finally gets to victory lane. And how about that? I believe the first win all season long for Murray Reedy Motorsports, so they certainly have to be buzzing on their camp as well. We'll toss to second place, the driver who was just that close to getting his first career win here at Darlington. That's Patrick Thompson. He's joined by Francisco Bacallao.
Well, Patrick, it's not the first time this season that you were close to grabbing the win. Just kind of take us through what it was like on those closing stages where you were mulling all sorts of strategy options there.
Yeah, that was a crazy strategy that I guess we had. I didn't think it was going to work. I kind of just went with it. I stuck with it. I said, I have nothing better to do. So I tried it once before. It almost paid off a little while ago. So I thought I'd do it again. And I was just hoping for the best, really. That's all it was. I knew I didn't have the speed to compete, really. It's been a while, but I thought I'd try it.
And now starting in the 2024 side of the schedule and the push towards the playoffs after a strong start like this here tonight, what are you most looking forward to in the next couple of races to try and make that push and be a part of the 14-driver playoffs?
Man, I just got to be consistent. I just got to keep getting top 10s if I can. I've managed to get a few throughout the year, and it's helped me. But I miss Watkins Glen, so I got pushed back a little bit. I got to make that up.
Is there any of the tracks that are left between now and Talladega that you're looking at to maybe capitalize on your first win?
To be honest, not really. But I'm gonna do my best at all of them. Give my best shot.
Of course, we like to wish you a happy New Year since we haven't seen you since last year, and Merry Christmas as well. We'll give you an opportunity to give a shout out to all the people that helped make this effort on this 88 team possible for all they do.
I want to shout out Caden Tufts. He's the one that makes my schemes every week. I want to shout out Jaden for getting me in this league. I want to shout out Mikey Neal. He's taught me everything I know about iRacing. He's been great for me. I want to thank you guys for what you do for the broadcast. It's beautiful every week. I love it. And I want to thank Tyler for running a beautiful league. This is the best one I've been in.
We appreciate the kind words, Patrick. Once again, Happy New Year and a Merry Christmas, and we hope to see you out there next week from the Kansas Speedway.
Will do. Happy New Year.
So that's Patrick Thompson, comes home in second place. Have to give all the credit to the driver bearing the Mike McFarland 2006 throwback. Beautiful colors, beautiful car, and great way to run the strategy at the end, just that close to his first career win. He's knocking on the door. He's going to get there soon enough. Well, we've gotten the story from two drivers on the winning side of the strategy. Unfortunately, we have to get the side of the losing end of the strategy, and we'll talk to the most dominant driver all night long, Brandon Hawken. And Brandon, just tell us what you're feeling right now. I know the race certainly was in your favor from the green all the way up until those last 20 laps when the strategy really just flipped on its head. What was your live reaction in that moment? What are you thinking right now at the end of it?
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure. I was saving that whole final run, and then there was a point where it just stalled out with about where I'd be about one lap short, and so I thought, I saw Lawson come in a couple laps earlier, and then I was just like, what, I'll bite the bullet, I'll come in and hopefully we can catch him there towards the end. Ethan had a really good entry. I probably should have stayed up on the track longer coming in, and then so I was chasing him down, and Lawson, who was on a little bit older tires there towards the end, and I was hoping the top two would run out of gas, but they did a really good job there saving. I wasn't I didn't think it was possible, so they did a really good job, and I just feel bad for Ethan there. I had a really big run there coming out at 2 on the last lap, and I thought like his car moved to the left a little bit, so I thought he was gonna like swing to the inside, and then he stayed where he was. So I misjudged that, and I ended up getting to the back of them. So I'm sorry about that, but man, that was a fun race regardless. I had so much green flag runs there, or so much green flag there, and I was just on the wrong side of the strategy there. If I was gonna do it again, I would. I don't know how I would have saved any more, but I at least would have maybe come in a few laps earlier just to get the fresh tires, get the jump. But still can't really complain with third. That was some really fun racing, and just on the wrong end of it. But it didn't work out too bad either way though.
I know a lot. We were talking about the strategy mostly in those last 20 laps, just because of the big switching that was going around with position. You and Ethan Fonseca Moreno coming in, of course, Lawson Peel coming in earlier. All those guys who had stayed out to the very end. But at what point did you and your teammates start really thinking about that strategy to the end and having to save as much? Because, I mean, we looked way earlier in this race where you and a lot of others were clutching and coasting through the corners. At one point, did it become a big concern to be like, hey, we got to save fuel or else the end of this race, might be thrown out of whack the way it kind of was with the strategy tonight?
Yeah, so from the very beginning of the race, it was almost fuel strategy. If it went green the entire time, we would have been probably about like a lap or two difference to the end. So I was just trying to maximize all the laps I could get there in the early part of the race. And then once we got that yellow, I think it was the second yellow that put it back into fuel mileage. And throughout that entire final run, we were I don't know how many laps short. It was I think maybe like 6 or 8 or something. It was something pretty much on the high end of being able to save. And but the race was it was pretty clean the entire race. So we just wanted to stay out and like hopefully make it on gas, but and then towards the very end, I just couldn't gain anything. I was stuck about a lap short. So I saw Lawson come in. I knew he was gonna just blow our doors off there if we didn't come in soon. So came in, and I cut my losses there, and tried to catch back up. But he was definitely on the gun there, and I just couldn't. It was really close there at the end, but I wish I couldn't have made contact with Ethan there, but had a. It was a really great race for both of them as well, and and just really great job to Lawton Slogger and Thompson there to be able to take that home 1-2. That was really impressive by them.
Well, now looking at your 3-race tenure in this series, results have come in at second, then first at Watkins Glen, and then third. You've knocked down all 3 stages of the podium. You've been able to dominate mostly throughout this series in your short tenure, but now we move forward. Kansas, IRP, Indianapolis Oval, Texas, Iowa, Talladega, moving forward to the end of the regular season. Any tracks in your head that's sticking out? Any favorites? Maybe ones that might challenge you a little more?
One that definitely sticks out is Indy. That's one of my favorite ovals, and it doesn't really matter what car it is. It's still like a similar way of driving it. So I'm really looking forward to Indianapolis. That's always been a really good track for me, and Iowa. That's one that I think I can improve on, and so I'll work on that. And those are probably the 2 that stick out the most for sure. And we got a great group of tracks coming up, and I'm looking forward to it.
Regardless of track, it looks like you're always fast wherever we go, and it's awesome to see you rip around every single time we see you each week. Brandon, before we let you go, anybody in specific you want to thank for the 3rd place finish tonight?
Well, I'd just like to thank everybody at 4 Wide, you guys in the booth, all my teammates. We always have a good time here, and Lawton Slogger, he did a really great job, really great win for him, and Man, yeah, just really great race from everybody tonight. That was super clean, and yeah, looking forward to doing some more. We've been some really great racing from my time here, and yeah, just looking forward to more. It should be fun.
Always a great time seeing you out on track here in the 4-Wide Racing Series. Brandon, on behalf of all of us at the broadcast team, congratulations on third. Exciting to see what you can cook up at Kansas in the rest of the schedule, but Kansas next week.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
So that is Brandon Hawken in the 98 driver who comes home third for Skybox Racing. Wow, Francisco, boy, did we not expect that. We expected the 98 car to be handily up at the front, easily taking control of this race from start to finish and winning by a large margin. We did not expect the strategy to unfold in the way it did. We kind of told the story of how it would be close, but we didn't know how much it would alter the end of the race. And for Craig Lownslager, huge saving grace. Like you said, it was a season that really wasn't one to remember for him, and most of his Murray Motorsports camp. This win can easily turn his entire season around.
You're right about that, Kenneth. It absolutely can. The momentum swings are real. But also that caution when it came out at the time in which it did, we recognized it at the time that it was going to be a close call. It certainly was going to be question marks, and we saw both types of strategies unfold, and staying out was the one that won for Craig Lownslager. We saw Lawson Peel able to drive all the way back up to third. But you also think about it, if they would have committed to the strategy earlier, could they have gotten there after with saving less fuel? But that's always a question that you ask in hindsight. Considering he was able to get back to third, proves that either strategy could have really worked. So credit to both of them for being able to make the strategy work and just really for being able to put on a good show. This was a fantastic race that we were presented here today, and a good effort by Craig Lownslager on. And he didn't have the best race. You heard him mention there that he had a pit road penalty at one point, and somehow he was able to drive back towards the front of the field and win this race on that strategy call. So credit to him and the team for making that one work, and now he's got a win on the season, and he can look forward to the next 5 races, or the next 6 races rather, and just try and get as many points as he can to help his playoff hopes in terms of sealing up that top 14 position. And we get to go to Kansas next week, Kenneth, for the Bracket Challenge Championship finale between Lance Hill and Ethan Fonseca.
You were talking about asking questions about the strategy and how different things could have been at the end of this race. If you're Lownslager, you're not asking any questions. You don't care what ifs. You just know what happened, and that's a race victory. So Lownslager can turn his season around, and yeah, Kansas is going to be big. Our first mile and a half since Old Atlanta, where Luke Canup was able to get the win on the long run. Brandon Hawken, also a force to be reckoned with in that race in Georgia, so be sure to probably see a little more of him when we get to America's Heartland next Wednesday. We head to IRP, then the Big Oval at Indianapolis and Speedway. We head to Texas, Iowa, then Talladega, and that'll close out the regular season for the Season 6 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. Will kick off the playoffs at Chicagoland. So the season is slowly but surely winding down. We're getting closer to decision time on those who will make the postseason and the run for the title. So that'll do it for our coverage of the 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series. From the Lady in Black, congratulations to Craig Lownslager on his first win of the season. For Tyler Murray and everyone from the admin team and race council, for Charlie Beyer, Keelan Belsha at the KBueno Racing Network, and for our broadcast crew on the show for tonight. Alongside Francisco Bacallao, I'm Kenneth Bueno, signing off from Darlington Raceway. We'll see you next week at Kansas Speedway for 1.5-mile oval action. Until then, good night from Darlington, South Carolina.